Hello, everybody. I see lots of people coming in and joining. Give everyone a few minutes to join, and we'll get started soon. Good afternoon. I'm still seeing the numbers coming up on participants joining, so I'm going to give everyone just about one more minute to join, and then I'll start the presentation. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carolyn Floyd. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt, and I am thrilled to be speaking with you today about Immersion Vanderbilt. I'm still seeing the numbers tick up just a little bit, so I know people are still joining us, but I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. The presentation will last just a few minutes, and I am seeing the questions populate in the Q&A. Please do feel free to add your questions there as we go. I might answer them as I go through the presentation, and we'll save some for the very end. If some questions are very specific to your situation and it might require a little bit of separate conversation, then I might just decide to follow up with you after the webinar instead of addressing it in this call. But I will answer every question that you pose now and later. So the number is held steady for a little bit, so I feel confident in getting started. And again, I'm Carolyn. I'm with the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt. We have been implementing and coordinating the undergraduate degree requirement called Immersion Vanderbilt since 2018. The first class with the requirement graduated last spring in 2023. I am so pleased to say that 100% of the students fulfilled the requirement and everybody graduated in the first class. So we are looking forward to a second successful year, and we are so excited to see the work that your students are doing under the mentorship of faculty and staff here at Vanderbilt University and the incredible projects that they are completing. We're also really excited to be able to offer more resources than ever before this year. And I am very honored to roll out to you some updates that we made that are making the program much easier for students to navigate, simpler for them to complete the requirements, and folding in a little bit more the things that they are already doing here in a way that'll be more seamless for them. So if you're already familiar with the degree requirement, you might hear a few different things than you've heard in the past. And if there's anything that doesn't sound clear, then please drop your questions into the Q&A, and I'll be sure to answer those either as I go or at the end of my presentation. What you are looking at now is the website for Immersion Vanderbilt. So everything I'm going to show you is a resource that's available to you to go and check out after this presentation is over. This is also the single best place for you to go to look for any sort of updates about Immersion Vanderbilt. So if you wanted to know what was kind of happening, we do make updates on a pretty regular basis to the website. It's a great place to start, but I'll show you a couple of places to go if you need to find more information. This is our homepage. We have made some updates that were effective February 2nd this semester that we've outlined here, and I'll go through those in a little bit more detail. I also provided a short video clip in case you wanted to listen to a little bit of the updates and to hear about some things that are still coming. We also provide on our homepage a description of the 6 experiential pathways that students can follow to complete immersive experiences that will qualify as the basis for their final culminating project. And I'll just pause for a second and say that that's what make up Immersion Vanderbilt. So there is an immersive experience or a set of immersive experiences, and then one culminating project that students complete under the mentorship of a Vanderbilt faculty person. And they submit it by the end of their last semester to get the Immersion Vanderbilt requirements satisfied on their transcript. And on their transcript, they include a title that the students give to their project and the experiential pathway that is most representative in their final project. If you're curious about how Immersion Vanderbilt is going, how it's being engaged with, then we've got a nice section called Immersion Vanderbilt by the Numbers. I think this is a lot of fun, and we'll update this at the end of this academic year. But if you're just kind of curious about perhaps what students and faculty are doing, here's a little layout for you. We have been able to offer monetary support in a way that we never were in the early years. We are awarding students funding through several different sources. Great majority of it are through donors that are connected through donors and alumni relations. And we also are very fortunate to have the support of the provost and the chancellor for Immersion Vanderbilt as well. Students can participate in any of the schools and colleges on campus. So they could do something in the School of Medicine, School of Nursing, other professional schools, or in any of the 4 undergraduate schools and colleges. They don't have to stay within their own major or in their own school or college. Their faculty advisor can be from any place on campus. We have a little more information about the faculty engagement. So if you want to know how faculty are engaging with students, if you want to talk to your students about who they might connect with to work with on their project, then there's some great information on this page. I'm going to scroll back up to the top and show you the resources that are specific for undergraduate students. On this tab, if you go to this and you select all about immersion, give a little bit of a layout for students so they know what the 2 key parts are for Immersion Vanderbilt. How do they get started? So they might already have an idea or they might need some help. We see all of it. Students come to us for advising at every stage. A lot of students come into Vanderbilt with some form of funding. So they might have a merit scholarship or the Crescera Aude stipend, and they'll come to us and ask for some guidance on how they might use that for their immersive experience. Or they might not have any funding and they need to know how they can get connected to those resources or what kind of experiences they're even eligible to complete. So we always encourage them to come to us early, come to us often, and just use us as a thought partner and a resource to connect them to all sorts of resources. There are 6 immersive experience pathways, like I mentioned. Reading down this list, you will note that students are doing these types of experiences already. So your student might be thinking about doing 1 or 2 of those qualifying experiences. So it's not something in addition to what they're already doing. We are taking the things that students have traditionally done that are learning opportunities done outside of a classroom and building Immersion Vanderbilt around that. So it's not something extra, it's extra support and extra scaffolding and extra recognition of those things that students have already done. Of course, with the resources and the support of this office, Immersion Vanderbilt does give students an opportunity to explore things that they might not normally have tried. And this might be the only opportunity as an undergraduate student to do some of the things that they've always wished to do. So it's a great way for students to engage however they feel most comfortable and in whatever area they really want to explore. When they do their culminating project, they can decide they might want to use one of their experiences or multiple. They might know that they are already going to do a specific project, and that's fine, but they only get one project. So while they can submit multiple immersive experiences and tell us what they've been doing and apply for funding for those, in the end, they get one culminating project, and that's the project that gets approved and marked as complete to go on their transcript to satisfy the requirement. We are seeing so many different types of culminating projects from students. One of the most fun things about Immersion Vanderbilt is that the students can choose what their project looks like. It doesn't have to be something like a paper, although papers are fantastic and it certainly can be a great project. If a student wants to create something outside of that, the world is wide open to them. They can do all sorts of things. We've seen films, we've seen podcasts, we are seeing a lot of presentations. Students are taking opportunities to create portfolios, and they can use those later on when they are applying for jobs. So their projects can do a lot of wonderful things for them. And they submit their projects to us through the Immersion portal when they're finished so that we can mark that requirement as complete and get the information on their transcripts. A wonderful thing about Immersion Vanderbilt also is that it is pre-approved in so many places. So you might be thinking, my student is so busy, their major is so demanding, they're going to study abroad one semester or any number of things. How will they complete this? And it's very helpful that a lot of programs are already pre-approved. So the schools and colleges decide this at the local level. So each one of the schools decided what would already satisfy. So they have majors or minors that are experiential enough and end with a culminating project that do make up the two components of Immersion Vanderbilt. So here's a nice list, and this is available for the students to see. In addition to these programs, we also have tagged classes. We started doing this last year, so this is a fun new update. There are classes that faculty can choose to tag as satisfying the immersive experience portion or the culminating project portion of Immersion Vanderbilt. So they're not necessarily part of a pre-approved major or minor, but the classes in themselves can satisfy one of those two components for Immersion Vanderbilt. We also make available to students an opportunities database where they can go and browse. It's kind of like a job board and see what kind of opportunities are available to them on campus. If they wanted to do something off campus, like a job or an internship that would take them away, then they would go through our partner office, the Career Center, who will help connect students with those types of opportunities. We have resources for faculty and staff as well, but I'm going to hop over here to the funding page. I see some questions that kind of relate to this. So this is a page that we are keeping updated, and it's constantly changing. So we encourage you and your students to visit the funding page to get guidance about what funding is available and what the parameters are around eligibility for some fund requirements. So we just lay out here some of the basics about some funds. As I mentioned before, we do receive a lot of donor support, and sometimes those donations come with requirements that might make some students eligible or ineligible, like they must be in a specific school or college, or there must be demonstrated financial need or some other type of requirement. So we discuss on this page the parameters, and then we also show all of the funds that run through our office on this page. So there might be other things around campus, but these are those that we are either aware of or that we help to manage. Most of these funds that you'll see on this page right now in February are unavailable at this point if they are on a rolling basis. The students have taken great advantage of the increase in funds that we have received for Immersion Vanderbilt this year, and we have been supporting some incredible experiences and projects. We have one fund that we're currently open on a rolling basis, and then a couple of others that are based on an application timeline that are still in the review process and should be awarded shortly. But this is just a place where you can always go to see what kind of funds we have available. If you are interested in supporting Immersion Vanderbilt, there's also a Support Immersion Vanderbilt tab over here where folks can go and donate. And I just want to pause for a moment and thank the parent support that we have received through this option, and to let you know how greatly appreciated it is if you are a parent who has contributed to Immersion Vanderbilt. A couple of things about the updates that we just went through. I want to make sure I pause and give this a moment. So students can participate in Immersion Vanderbilt as they see fit for their own schedule. So there's not really a timeline. We used to have a sophomore deadline where the students in the sophomore spring had to submit an immersive experience declaration form to tell us about what kind of experience they think they would do. That proved to be just a little too soon. And so we've pushed that back to the fall of the junior year. So if your student is a sophomore this year, they don't have a deadline next month for any kind of submission. They can just go through the summer and decide later if they want to log that experience as an immersive experience. The other thing is that we have made enhancements such as the tagged classes so that it's easier for us to do the tracking. Students don't have to submit a form for every type of experience that they're doing any longer. If we can track it through enrollment, then we're tracking it and just leaving the students to do the work and not worry about whether or not they have logged it. We are streamlining the process for locating and applying for funding opportunities. Next year, we'll have an even more streamlined process in place. And we have simplified the forms that students are using, so they're a little bit shorter, there are fewer of them, and they don't have to go through the same process they've been going through. And then we've changed the way we do advising. Students are always welcome to set an advising appointment by clicking on this link here and going into the portal, but they can also drop into our office anytime between 8:30 and 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock, Monday through Friday. That is my presentation. I am going to look over to the Q&A now and see what questions I haven't answered, but please keep the questions coming. I am really eager to see what you're asking and to see how I can be helpful. So I see this question about what semester and year students should do their project. You know, the experience can happen anytime and the project can happen anytime, but I'm finding that it's better if students wait until at least their junior year, usually towards the end, to think about wrapping up their projects. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First, a lot of the great work that students are doing is going to come when they are later in time. So they've got the knowledge through courses, they've got the experience of a couple of summers, and the work that they're doing is incredible. Immersion also doesn't have to be rushed, so a project could take a little while to complete and to perfect if they'd like to do so. We also have a rule about funding where students, once their project is complete, then they don't really need funding to do their immersion project anymore. So I want them to be very thoughtful about that. And when they come to our office for guidance, we talk about a timeline and how they might maximize the resources available to them and to just take the time that is available. So for anybody graduating this semester, for instance, their deadline is the last day of classes. They have to submit their culminating project by or before April 22nd. And then faculty have until May 2nd to mark them as complete. My recommendation is not to necessarily wait until the very, very end of the semester, but sometime this semester is a great time for seniors to go ahead and wrap it up and submit their project to their faculty person. They can always finish early, but I really don't think there's a reason to finish in the freshman or sophomore year, especially because students have a year from the time they complete an experience to decide to use that experience for their culminating project. So an example would be if a student went on a Maymester in the summer of 2023, then they have until this summer to really decide that that's what they want to use for their final project. So they can really stop and think about that. They can submit multiple experiences. So there's not a deadline for when to submit that necessarily. But if we don't see something on file from a student, or we haven't tracked an enrollment through a tagged class or a major or minor by the fall of their junior year, then we'll be reaching out to the students and asking them to consider what they're going to be doing that's experiential. But that gives them over 2 years and 2 summers to think about something that's an immersive experience that they'll be doing. There are so many ways to find opportunities to complete the Immersion Vanderbilt requirement. For students who might want to explore some of the pathways, we have specific events designated to those pathways. So for instance, today we're hosting an event called Explorations in Research. And this was something that we created a couple of years ago, where we invite faculty from all across campus to come and talk about the research that they are doing, in the hopes that students will want to work with them on their research. So we do these really fun lightning rounds in the beginning, and then the faculty are set up with like backboards and posters, and some of them have TVs with them, and the students can go and just sort of shop around and get to know the faculty and see what's available. And we have a few different events like that. We also have showcases of student projects, which are a great way to see what kind of work other students are doing and the faculty that have been doing that work with them. Coming up on March 28th, we are hosting the undergraduate research fair. We do that twice a year, and this is such a great opportunity for students to see research from all across campus. And it's open to everybody, so if you are able to come to that, then we would love to have you here also. But we have opportunities on the database, on that undergraduate student tab that I showed to you, and anything that a student is doing outside of a classroom can be considered an immersive experience. So we can connect them with experiences, or they can find them on their own. And it doesn't have to be something that's offered through Vanderbilt. So if a student found something through a different university, or if they were on their own doing some kind of a project, then that would also be a great immersive experience. I see a question about which advisor. Students don't get assigned an advisor for Immersion Vanderbilt. They can select any of us. We all offer advising appointments. So when they go on that tab, it takes them to a closed portal that requires Vanderbilt single sign-on, but the students will be able to access that. And if they can't find a time to meet with somebody that matches their schedule, they can send an email to us, and I meet with students around the clock. So anytime they need to meet, we'll make ourselves available. But we offer in-person and Zoom and phone advising for students. The immersion project is not graded or pass-fail. The faculty advisor marks it as complete or incomplete. If it's incomplete, then it goes back to the student for edits, and then they resubmit it, and the faculty person will mark it complete once they have met the standard. So the goal is that the student and faculty person have already conferred and decided what the project is going to be and what success will look like for it, so that when the student submits it, there shouldn't be a lot of going back and forth. And just kind of anecdotally, there usually isn't. The students and faculty agree on when the project will be submitted and it comes through. But that submission process is how we get the degree audit marked off for Immersion Vanderbilt. But it's a complete incomplete standard. See a question: can an engineering student participate in School of Medicine immersive experience? Yes. Any student from any school can participate in any school across campus. So we encourage that. I love that students are participating in experiences all around campus and exploring the things that they're good at doing and the things that they enjoy doing as well. There's a question about the majority of projects requiring funding. I don't think that a majority require funding. I think that they receive funding on a large volume because the students can think of ways to improve what they have. But for the most part, they don't require funding. However, I think that it's wonderful when students do get some sort of funding support to make their projects better, to have the materials they need to be able to go offsite to create something or to have an experience somewhere. A lot of experiences are funded either through being paid, like an internship, or sometimes research is paid. Sometimes there's an award stipend. So something like our undergraduate summer research program comes with a stipend. So that's not really considered the same thing as like applying for specific funding. So I think that a lot of them do require funding, but I don't know if it's a majority of them yet. If they're built into a major or a minor, sometimes they still might require a little extra funding, but most of the time they don't. Um, a student can connect with a faculty member in a multitude of ways. A lot of students are connecting with the faculty through the classes they are taking. So they already know the faculty in the areas that are interesting to them, whether it's part of their major or part of a class that they took. They are also connecting with them through the networking events that we host or through other networking events. An example of that is there's a student org that does a match day where students can match with faculty, usually in some sort of medical science field. And they can meet up with labs that way and get to know a lot of different people. We also encourage students to contact faculty that are doing something that the student finds interesting. So that's different than cold calling like on 10 different people just because you're looking for someone, but to really intentionally reach out to somebody whose work is interesting to you. But I think a majority of students are meeting faculty through some type of classroom engagement or an activity. It might be through something that they do as part of a student org. Here's a question: is our office the same as a GEO office? So we did merge with Global Education Office a couple of years ago so that the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt includes study abroad. So that team is part of my team, and we all work very closely together. However, they still are the specialists on study abroad. So I lean on them for their expertise with the different programs and the different locations and how students might apply, but we are all part of one team together. Here's a question: my student's a junior. What does that mean for him? Juniors right now are kind of in like that nice spot where they're doing the experiences and thinking about what they might need to do for their final projects. If you are a parent or a family member wondering how you can help your student, the best thing you can do is to send them to talk to my team. Send them for an advising appointment with the Office of Experiential Learning and Immersion Vanderbilt. They can reach out directly to me. My email address is carolyn.floyd@vanderbilt.edu. I am happy to answer questions. Our office's email is experiential.learning@vanderbilt.edu. We'll include all of this in the chat as well. But if you're on the website and you go to contacts and events, there's the immersion team, and we are all right here. See, there I am. Anybody can reach out to anyone on our team at any point in time. Our office is located in the Student Life Center. And like I mentioned, we're open from 8:30 to 12 o'clock and then 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock for advising, but we're here till 5. So anytime a student comes in, we'll be sure to speak with them. Oh, great. Is a presentation like this one given to students? This exact format is not provided to students, but we do several different types of webinars and overviews. We are available at orientation and do presentations then. And we offer a lot of different types of engagement through those networking events. But a presentation like this certainly could be offered to students if you think that would be a great idea. But like the recording that's on the homepage for our website right now is something that we hope that they will go and see. We like to do a lot of those sort of continuing resources, especially for small things. Like we did one the other day for students who received a specific fund so that they would know what they needed to do to use those funds. The form submissions, they don't have to be submitted too far in advance for the experiences, and they can also be submitted after the fact. We just like to know what students are doing. And so if we're not tracking it through an enrollment, or if their faculty person isn't tracking it through part of a co-curricular cohort, then we just need them to tell us about it at some point. And usually if they are getting funding, then one of the requirements that we have for receiving the fund is just filling out the little form so that we know what they're planning to do. And I'm looking through some of these just to see, because I'm going to group some of them together. Okay, so a question that I see here is some examples of recent projects. I am so glad you asked that question. So I've got 3 monitors, and I'm looking at one over here with chat, and the other one over here has a resource that I use that has a list of projects. And I was going through trying to find some of my favorite projects to prepare for this. And I have to confess that I always get a little choked up. I am incredibly fortunate to sit in the position I'm sitting in, to be able to see the types of projects that students are doing and to see the incredible work that our faculty are doing with them and the resources that they're able to use. So some of my favorites I wrote down earlier. There were 2 different athletes that came to us last year, and they had vastly different outcomes, but for some reason, these 2 just really stood out to me. One of the students didn't know what he wanted to do until he engaged with our data science minor. And then he did a really cool project with analytics about data science and sports statistics. Another student played football, and he didn't know what he wanted to do for his immersion. But we were talking, and he had taken a Tai Chi class, and he had engaged what he learned in the class on the football field, which I thought was really astounding and incredible. And so he did his final project about that. We currently have a group of students working with a faculty person on deciphering some Syriac manuscripts, which I find incredibly fascinating, to be able to work with a person who can decode manuscripts, but with a group of other students. And there is an international component to that class. It's actually a travel embedded class led by a faculty person. We have some phenomenal people here who work in the fashion industry, and we have our innovation center called the Wondery. I hope that you've had a chance to engage with that at some point, or just look it up. The website is fantastic, but they have a fab lab. So their Fabletics Fabrics lab is available for students to go to at any point, but they work on upcycling. And then they also do a project where students go to Fashion Week. So that's been a lot of fun. A couple of very personal projects that really spoke to me. And this is also perhaps going to tell you how very important you are to Immersion Vanderbilt, because these 2 students used their families as the inspiration for what they did. One young woman came to me, not really sure what she wanted to do, but she said that something that was on her mind was doing a project around her grandmother, who was one of the few people that is still alive who had bound feet. And this young woman and I spoke about how that might turn into a project. And I think she's ultimately decided to do something with a website that's devoted to women that we love, and to discuss her grandmother and the effect that her grandmother had on her own mother, and then how that's affecting her, and then how that might also go down to affect this young woman's children, which I found beautiful and incredible. And so glad that she wanted to share that through Immersion. And then the other one is a young woman who wrote a book of songs for her father, who had passed away as a child. And then she performed them here at the university at one of our new theaters, and had a beautiful evening of music with supportive people from around campus. These are just some of the few projects, but we are so fortunate to be able to see rows and rows of students performing at our creative showcase. We get to see different types of research at the research fair. There are 1,700 students that graduate every spring, and the projects are just outstanding. Just looking over here, I'm seeing projects from HOD Capstone, where students work in private equity, or they go to London, or they are working right here in Nashville. Students working in the School of Nursing, doing law. There's one student who did an opening statement for their project. There's really no boundary on what kind of thing they can do. It's just best when it's something that's really important to them that they feel passionate about. I'm looking back at your questions again now, and there's a question about using study abroad for a project. Some of the study abroad programs do include a culminating project at the end for the program, just based on what the provider requires. And so those can satisfy the Immersion Vanderbilt requirement. The student does need to have a faculty person here at Vanderbilt to sign off on that with them. So it's better if they get a hold of a faculty person before they leave, but it's not impossible to find a person after the fact to work with them also. But they don't have to use that project either. They can go on and create something else. So study abroad is really cool because the students might be going over for a specific reason tied to other classes they've taken. And I think a pretty obvious one would be like language immersion. So they might create something out of that or come back and take some of the senior seminars that are offered that require a heightened language requirement, and that can really help them build something out more about what they did for their study abroad. Mark your calendars too, March 5th, there is a study abroad specific webinar, which you probably have already gotten word about, but since I'm talking about it, I wanted to go ahead and mention it to you. And I see a question about a person who did research at another center. Probably that can be done here. There are some special rules around undergraduate research needing a faculty person all along. This is one of those cases where I say, send your student to me, let's have a conversation. I definitely don't want to say no ever. I want to say, let's figure out how we can make this work, because every experience is valuable. It's students, I'm seeing questions like, how do they pick their advisor based on different types of experiential pathways? And really, it comes down to sometimes if there's not a faculty person that's working in the specific area, but there is a faculty person that your student feels close and comfortable with, then they can go ahead and invite them to work with them, even though it might not be in that faculty person's specific area. I generally like students to stay where the faculty tend to be working, but sometimes there's just that great relationship and they might want the person to work with them on completing the project. But again, we also will reach out to the schools and colleges and try to find someone for a student. So there's a lot of help, and my team is more than happy to work with students to find whatever the resources they need, even if it is a faculty person. I see a question about the HOD capstone. So human and organizational development is a major in the Peabody College, and it is one of our pre-approved programs. It has a capstone semester where students do a semester-long internship. And the question is it limited to management work, or can they apply for other kinds? Oh, I think the internship can cover any kind of work. I've seen students doing community engagement, finance, they're working in economics. I think HOD covers such a wide swath that I think it could be almost anything the student wants to do. I'll show you the parents list again one more time. I see that question. And sorry, I'm just going, these are great questions. Let me see. There's a question about sort of seniority. As students get a little bit older, do they get better opportunities? So it's an interesting question because it's not an across the board same answer. So there might be something like, say, Maymasters or the undergraduate summer research program, where we see that students have one last opportunity. Sometimes that can be factored in. It's not always a dispositive factor, though. So sometimes the answer is yes. Well, that'll be part of a consideration in a larger metric, but not all the time is it considered. I see a question, time is of the essence for certain student populations, and can an experience fit around that schedule? Absolutely. And I will tell you that one of the things that I've been working on with partner offices, especially when we're thinking about students have a tighter time frame, maybe students who transferred in as juniors or student athletes, maybe students in the ROTC program, there is a lot that we are doing to try to connect them to the things that they might want to do around their schedules. So the tagged classes are one of the ways that we have found to make it more legible and visible for students to complete the requirement when they have a tight schedule. Maymesters or something happening during that time of May. But also there's a lot of opportunity for students to perhaps fit something in on a different break. But we work with the departments and the other entities on campus. So for instance, I work closely with athletics on figuring out ways that we can help meet the needs of student athletes. And again, the same thing I've said a few times, send your student to me because I can help them specifically with things. A lot of these questions are better answered on an individual basis because a larger policy is harder to make for large groups of students. Study abroad webinar will probably cover Maymester experiences as well, and certainly is a great place to ask a question. I could try, and I probably could answer a lot of questions about them, but that's the staff that does help manage those with the colleges that offer them. Somebody asked again about the event that's happening today. It's called Explorations in Research. It's going to be here in the Student Life Center Commodore Ballroom from 4 to 6. And students are welcome to just come on over. We'll have some refreshments and a lot of wonderful partner offices and faculty from across campus. So again, if you wanted to see any of the resources I talked about, the best tab to go to is the undergraduate students tab, all about immersion. This is going to give you the best layout. Here's the list of pre-approved programs. That is, let's see, just right here on the undergraduate tab. I believe that you all have received in the chat my email address and the links to our website and the address for my office's email. I am looking down the list of questions and I think I got to all of them. But before I end this, I just want to give you just one more moment to think if you have any other questions and to let you know that I do encourage you to reach out and ask questions and stay involved. Come to our showcase events if you can. Make sure your students know that we are here and ready to advise them at all times. And I don't see any new questions coming in. Thank you all so much for being here. This is an absolute pleasure, and I hope that I answered some of your questions. Thank you so much, and anchor down.